cashier told you, on camera, I personally control the safe. And then months later, after getting promoted, said, well, the money is somewhere in the store. You wouldn't call that clarification. You'd call that a problem. So here's the question. When Kash Patel said in 2024 that Jeffrey Epstein's black book was under the direct control of the FBI director, and now says something very different as the FBI director, which version are we supposed to believe? Because this is not a normal hearing. This is not routine oversight. This is a recorded collision between a public promise and official power, happening in real time, under oath, with consequences that go far beyond one man's words. The scene opens with Schiff holding something simple but devastating: a clip, a transcript, and a clock. 12 minutes. That's all he needs. 12 minutes to test whether what was said before power survives after power. And the words are not vague. They are not open to interpretation. In that interview, Kash Patel didn't speculate. He didn't hedge. He said clearly that Epstein's black book was under the direct control of the FBI director, and that the reason it hadn't been released was because of who was on it. Then he challenged the system itself. Put on your big boy pants. Tell us who the pedophiles are. That's not commentary. That's a commitment. Now fast forward. Same man, different chair. This time not behind a microphone with a friendly host, but under questioning, on the record. And Schiff doesn't ask 10 questions. He asks one, over and over, tightening the frame each time. Was that statement true? Was the black book under the direct control of the FBI director? And this is where the shift happens. Not loud, not dramatic, just precise enough to matter. The black book was in the possession of the FBI. Not the director, not direct control, just somewhere inside the institution. That difference may sound small. It isn't. In legal terms, that's the difference between personal accountability and bureaucratic diffusion. Between I have it and someone has it. And once that shift happens, the entire promise starts to dissolve. Because if you told millions of people that the key evidence was personally controlled at the top, and then, when you become the top, you redefine control as a vague institutional possession, then the question isn't what changed in the evidence. The question is what changed in you. Schiff doesn't let it go. He moves to the next layer, still anchored in the same logic. If the FBI had it then, and you now lead the FBI, do you have it now? Simple chain of custody. Simple yes or no. But there is no yes or no. There is only deflection. The index has been released. The index, not the network, not the connections, not the names that were implied in that original statement. Just a document that had already circulated in civil litigation years earlier. Something narrower, safer, already known. So now we have two versions of reality, both on record. One where the truth was being held back and needed courage to be revealed. And one where the release of a limited index is presented as full transparency. And that gap, that space between what was promised and what is delivered, is where this hearing actually lives. And that gap doesn't stay contained to one statement. It spreads. It shows up in language, in phrasing, in the exact words chosen when the stakes get higher and the questions get sharper. Because after the Epstein exchange, Schiff pivots. And this is where the hearing stops being about one promise and starts becoming a pattern. He goes back to something else Kash Patel said under oath during his confirmation. No politicization, no retribution, no punishment for agents based on the cases they worked. Clear, categorical commitments. So Schiff does what prosecutors do. He narrows the question until there's nowhere left to go. Did you terminate or discipline any FBI employee, in whole or in part, because of their involvement in investigations related to Donald Trump or January 6th? Yes or no? That's not a rhetorical question. That's a legal frame. In whole or in part closes the obvious loophole. It removes ambiguity. It forces a binary answer. And yet, there is no binary answer. No one at the FBI has been terminated for case assignments alone. Alone. One word, one insertion. And suddenly the entire answer changes shape. Because alone implies something else could be combined with it. Something adjacent, something convenient. This is what lawyers call a qualifier. And qualifiers are not neutral. They are designed to protect a statement from being technically false while still avoiding a full admission. Schiff hears it immediately. He strips the word away, he resets the question. Not alone, not isolated. In any part, in any capacity, did you take action against someone because of the cases they worked on? Again, simple. Again, direct. And again, no answer. Instead, the response loops back to standards, oaths, performance, mission. Abstract concepts that sound legitimate but don't address the question. It's like asking someone, "Did you take the money?" and hearing, "I believe in financial integrity." That's not an answer. That's a detour. And the repetition begins. Schiff asks again. And again. Each time removing another layer of language, each time tightening the structure. Did you do it? Yes or no? At one point, Patel says the question is a trap. But here's the problem with calling a question a trap. In a courtroom, a trap only works if the truth is damaging. If the answer were clean, if it were truly no, then there is no trap. There is just a question and an answer. So now we have a second pattern, stacked on top of the first. A public commitment made in advance, a precise question asked under oath, and a response that shifts, qualifies, and avoids direct confirmation. And it doesn't stop there. Schiff introduces allegations, specific ones, from within the FBI itself. Claims that agents were removed, reassigned, or pressured because of their involvement in politically sensitive investigations. Now, at this point, the hearing reaches a critical threshold. Because this is no longer hypothetical. This is no longer about wording. This is about actions. So the question changes slightly, but its core remains the same. If senior FBI personnel say you did this, if they claim retribution, are they lying? And Patel doesn't say yes. He says, anyone can say whatever they want. That's not a denial. That's distance. That's a refusal to engage the substance of the allegation while technically not conceding it. In prosecutorial terms, this is what's called evasion through generalization. You take a specific accusation and respond with a universal statement that doesn't resolve it. And by now, the pattern is undeniable. Promise. Question. Qualification. Deflection. Repeat. And then the hearing crosses a line, from evasive language into something heavier, something harder to ignore. Because Adam Schiff brings the conversation back to Epstein. But this time, he doesn't ask about documents. He asks about people. Not where is the black book, but who was involved. Not custody, but connection. And that shift matters, because now the question isn't administrative, it's human. Schiff references another exchange, this one with Senator Kennedy, where Kash Patel was asked a blunt question. Did Jeffrey Epstein traffic young women to anyone besides himself? And Patel's answer, carefully phrased, leans on absence. No credible information, no prosecutable leads, nothing that meets the threshold to act. But then comes the qualifier again. The same pattern. The information we have is limited. Limited is not zero. Limited is not none. Limited is a door left slightly open, just enough to step back later if needed. And in a prosecutorial frame, that matters. Because when you combine no credible leads with limited information, you're not closing the case. You're lowering the burden of explanation. Schiff presses. He forces the interpretation out into the open. Are you telling the American people that Epstein trafficked no one to anyone else? That there are no other names? That the entire network collapses into a single individual? And Patel resists the framing. He doesn't affirm it. He doesn't deny it cleanly. He shifts to process, to what prior administrations concluded, to what could or could not be prosecuted. That's a legal shield. It moves the focus from truth to proof, from what happened to what can be charged. And those are not the same thing, because there are victims, real ones. People like Virginia Giuffre, who have testified under oath that Epstein did not operate alone, that there were others, that there was a network, and now the gap widens again. Not just between promise and delivery, but between testimony and official position. Then comes the moment that changes the temperature of the room. Schiff introduces a detail that, on its own, might seem procedural, but in context becomes something else entirely. After an interview conducted by Todd Blanche, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's closest associate, a convicted sex trafficker, describes a circle of individuals connected to Epstein. According to the account, that circle includes people currently in the orbit of power, and then she is moved, not months later, not after a review, immediately after. transferred to a minimum security facility, one that, by standard classification, is not designed for someone with her conviction profile. Now pause for a second. Strip away the politics. Strip away the names. If a key witness in a major case names individuals connected to power, and then is quietly relocated to a more comfortable environment right after, what would you call that? Coincidence? Administrative routine? Or something that demands explanation? Schiff asks the obvious question: who made that decision? And Patel's answer is as revealing as anything said before. He doesn't know. The Bureau of Prisons, he says. They acted on their own. No coordination, no input, no awareness from the director of the FBI. Think about that. The head of the FBI, in the middle of a high-profile, politically sensitive case involving one of the most notorious trafficking networks in modern history, does not know why a central figure was moved under those circumstances. That's not just a gap. That's a vacuum. And when you stack it, promise, qualification, deflection, and now absence of knowledge, the pattern stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like structure. And this is where the hearing stops being about what was said and becomes about what happens when language collapses under pressure. Because at a certain point, the structure breaks. The careful phrasing, the legal qualifiers, the controlled distance, they don't hold anymore. And what replaces them is not clarity, it's escalation. Kash Patel turns, not to the question, but to the questioner. Adam Schiff is no longer a member of Congress conducting oversight. He becomes a target. You are a liar. You are a fraud. You are a political buffoon. That shift matters. Because in any courtroom, in any deposition, in any structured inquiry, when a witness stops answering and starts attacking, it signals something very specific. It means the argument has run out of ground. And here's the contrast that defines this entire moment. Before he had power, Patel spoke with certainty. He named control. He implied knowledge. He promised exposure. He told the public that the truth was being withheld, and that he would be the one to reveal it. After he gained power, the certainty disappeared. Control became possession. Knowledge became limitation. Exposure became an index. Same subject, same man. Completely different answers. Now put yourself in the position of the people this actually affects. Not the politicians, not the commentators, the victims. The ones whose names never made it into headlines, whose stories depend on whether systems of power are willing to follow evidence wherever it leads. Imagine being told that there is a list, that there are connections, that the reason nothing has been revealed is because of who is on it. And then watching, years later, as that promise narrows into a partial document that was already public, while the larger network dissolves into no credible leads. That's not just disappointment, that's erosion. Because trust in a system doesn't break all at once. It erodes through moments like this, when statements shift, when answers narrow, when responsibility diffuses just enough to avoid being pinned down. And this is the part that goes beyond parties, beyond personalities, beyond whether you support one side or the other. This is about whether power answers to its own words. Because if a public official can make a specific, verifiable claim to gain support, and then, once in position, redefine that claim into something smaller, safer, and less accountable, then the issue isn't what happened in this hearing. The issue is what standard is left. What does under control mean if it doesn't mean control? What does transparency mean if it results in less clarity than the original promise? What does oversight mean if the answers never actually answer the question? At some point, the system has to decide whether language still binds power, or whether it's just a tool used to reach it. Because if it's the second one, then every hearing like this becomes performance. Every answer becomes optional. Every promise becomes temporary. And the next time someone stands in front of a camera and says, "Trust me, I'll show you the truth," the real question won't be whether they can. It will be whether they ever intended to. If you think moments like this matter, if you think words spoken on record should mean something, then don't just watch and move on. Like the video so it reaches more people, share it so the record doesn't disappear, subscribe for more breakdowns like this, and tell me in the comments. When power changes its story, what are we supposed to believe?